Hi, Matthew. I'm Michelle. I'm going to be the one that's going to be given the oral response to your thesis and defense video. I'm making this first recording before I even read your paper because I just got through watching your defense video. And first of all, I just want to say how much I enjoyed listening to you talk about your paper, especially that discipleship as a primary focus in ministry is something that is just a passion of yours. And I actually appreciate that and agree with you. You said some key things in your video that one of the things that drew you to talking about discipleship is because you looked at Jesus as the example of wanting us to be disciples primarily. Um, you also said something about the church unfortunately falls into a path of wanting to be centered on other things other than discipleship, and I agree with you on that. You mentioned a few of the things that need work, and so these are going to be the things that I'm going to avoid talking about, really, in my critique because you already pointed them out. That you wish you would have used more practical strategies, that you would have liked to have maybe used a few more opposing views. Also, that you didn't want it to seem preachy. I actually like preaching a lot, so that might be a positive for me. Also, that you wish you would have used more evidence of how discipleship, what that looks like in actual ministry. So, those are going to be some of the things that I won't talk about from your paper since you already recognize them. Again, I haven't read your paper yet, so I'll be looking for those things though. Another great thing that you mentioned is that you noticed that there's more evangelism than discipleship. And so I agree with that too. I actually come from an evangelism background where discipleship was the last thing on their minds. It was more of a win 'em and wed 'em idea of how church should operate. So I agree with you on that. And I liked how you not just brought out Jesus as our example, but also the apostles. Your content was excellent. The setup in the introduction. My favorite line outside the thesis was the quote on the slide, which says, "The secondary ministry focuses, whatever they may be, are important for inviting people into the church body and even for helping them engage with the body in relational ways. However, if the ministry is focused on shallow, relational programs or even on mere entertainment, it will not engage people in the intentional discipleship relationships Jesus commanded in the New Testament." And I liked how you used that quote in your introduction. And I think that it set up your paper well on your defense. You also did a good job defining the difference between evangelism and discipleship on the top of page 4. I like that you highlighted spiritual growth over numerical growth on page 5. Something I'd never thought of was imitation as a major aspect of discipleship, and that observing and imitating the teacher's life was a main disciple characteristic. And you highlighted that in page 5 and used Kenneth Gangel's book to enhance that notice. You give warning on page 6 that discipleship must be quick and rigorously intentional after salvation, making the case that evangelism is just not enough and the disciple may falter if they are not quickly discipled. And I was thinking right on with that. That's for sure. So one of the things that could have strengthened your apostles' leadership model is by quoting or having more references with a few more scriptures. Also, more resources would have strengthened your argument in that section. Page 10, the first paragraph, may be clarifying Paul's understanding of growth through obedience and sanctification with a scripture reference. But I liked how on page 7 you talk about the apostles being well trained by Jesus on intentional fellowship, which ultimately led to what is true discipleship. Also, you gave a warning on page 9 about whether the apostles had not prioritized discipleship. And I thought that was a great observance. So, what would have happened if they had neglected to disciple their converts, and not prioritize discipleship? Certainly, Christianity may not have gone throughout the whole world. Not only did you defend your thesis, but you also defended your main points throughout the paper. For instance, on page 11, you re-emphasized teaching, fellowship, imitation, and ongoing instruction all working together, which sums up many of the key components of the previous paragraphs. This sentence was a good reminder of the points you had just previously made. You made a claim on page 11 that might have strengthened your claim had you used a scripture passage or a good resource to back that claim. Let me look up page 11. I'll kind of allude to what I'm talking about. The claim was at the top of the paragraph under the failure of modern ministry focus on discipleship. In it, you said, in Jesus' ministry and the early church, there was no ministry or evangelism that was not accompanied by intentional discipleship. And then it was kind of a claim, so I didn't see any backup on that. So that might have helped you to have something there. And so, but I loved your comment under consumerism statistics on page 13. I thought that was well. First of all, it was scary when I read it, but basically you gave percentages that dealt with people and they're caught up in consumerism and how they look, how things feel. They like to have nice things, accumulate nice things. And so this statistic answers to why many churchgoers like a good show more than conviction and becoming learners of Christ. As far as formatting and Turabian, by and large, the formatting and grammar of the paper were very well done. Really, it's just a few little things that I noticed. Structure-wise, you did use too many first-level sections. In total, according to what Dr. Vandercook had said, there should be no more than 6 first-level sections, and that's including the intro and the conclusion. It might have been better to incorporate the programmatic ideology and this constructive ideology with evidence of disciples' weakness in modern ministry under the 4th main heading. Then you could have also used the positive impact of discipleship ministry in your conclusion. That's just maybe something I noticed that you might have could have done. Also, there was some missing page numbers in the footnotes, so if I wanted to maybe look up one of your resources and see where there were some missing, and I realized some of the stuff that you were using was web-based, so they don't always have page numbers, but some of the books was missing the page numbers as far as finding where you were reading for your resource. Just for an example, on page 4, you'll see that one's missing a page number. You need to try to use past tense when quoting an author. That's kind of nitpicky, I know, but I also saw that on page 4. Listen, I'm no grammar saint, so I'm not going to nitpick on your style or anything like that. I thought the writing style was excellent. Your grammar was also excellent. Reading your paper and transitions were smooth. Friend, I'm almost out of time. I just wanted to give some closing remarks. You did an excellent defense of the primary focus of the church, which is discipleship. I don't think you could have defended your stand any better than you did. I did look for some opposing views sources. It's like basically that take the side that discipleship is not the main focus of the church. In the paper, I never noticed a clear resource, although opposing views in the form of what isn't discipleship were understood throughout the paper. So good job with that. Your resources for your stand were excellent. The paper was clear, convicting, full of gospel truth. I had a clear understanding of sacrifice and suffering that a lot of churches leave out of their very popular preaching that you alluded to in the paper. The quote under section 6 was most impactful. That's the quote that's listed in the screen. Thank you.